What's up everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the VGFightSchool channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Before I jump into this video, I wanted to take some time to just show some of my gratitude to our audience members who've made it possible for the channel to get to 6,000 subscribers. It is a very huge deal for me and I appreciate you guys so much. Now, today's video is one of the very fun videos I enjoy making, which is based on some of the community comments and concerns. Most of you who've been in this channel for a long time, your comment has probably made it to the title of a video that has at least gotten about 5,000 to 10,000 views. So everybody, on this channel is subject to that. And some of you have already, been known by at least another 5,000 possible viewers, who knows wherever the heck it is they are. But I do and structure my content this way because it's relevant for you guys in the community. I would hate to make videos for myself to watch. I want my videos to actually be relevant to you. So today we're going to be jumping on another one. Now, this comment doesn't necessarily come from a community or audience member, but I have seen the sentiment shared in the past. In fact, just recently, another audience member of mine, who's also a good friend of mine, commented and said, one of the reasons a lot of players are actually kind of skeptic about, Gotham Knights is because of Cyberpunk 2077. And this is something that we've pointed out many times. But today's comment is interesting. It actually comes from a developer who used to work at Warner Brothers Games Montreal, who has now moved on to working at Unity, I think. And this is Osama Dorias. For those of you who've been in the Gotham Knights train, or in the Gotham Knights community, even before we called it the Gotham Knights, before we even knew, you know who this is. This is the gentleman that actually revealed years ago that Warner Brothers Games Montreal was working on 2 DC hero games, until it was then found out and confirmed on one of my videos by a developer that the second project was actually canceled. So in this tweet, Osama Dorias says this: game devs need better PR. It's going to be a problem with a few loud, in quote, fans thinking that they understand our reality and riling up others on their baseless assumptions. More of us are going to have to address this head on with education campaigns. Otherwise, it'll get worse. And I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, I've been praying that game developers would start to talk a little bit more about the process of game development. Sometimes we human beings are just human beings. If you come at somebody the wrong way, usually they'll either retreat or put up a wall. So many times when fans who are passionate about a project express their concerns, sometimes they express it tactfully, sometimes not so tactfully. And what do game developers usually do? They step away from social media, they go quiet. But some game developers have actually been in the space doing this work and talking about the creative process extensively. In fact, some may or may not know, but if you go on Twitter and you look through, you're going to see that there are a lot of developers out here that really do explain the process for a lot of other folk to know. One of them is Jason DeHarris, and I'm pointing to these developers because their work is quite valuable so that you can actually see. Jason DeHarris is the lead combat designer on the Jedi team. He worked on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. He has an entire blog dedicated to combat design and dedicated to how these are actually done. If you actually go there, you're going to see how he's, been able to break down different combat. And this is some of the games that he's worked on. And you can pretty much go and kind of see this blog about gaming, see his blog about different games, different combat games. And he talks about them from a development and mechanic side of things. I believe that this is really going to start the conversation to opening people's eyes to seeing the challenges of game development so that folks can know exactly how this process works. Another thing in this entire conversation that we barely talk about much is also the third party in this entire enterprise of developing games, which is the publisher. Most gamers don't necessarily, in a sense, and I've been guilty of this too, differentiate between the publisher and the developer. And sometimes we say things about a game like, oh, this Ubisoft game sucks because Ubisoft can never make a good game in their lives, or something like that. Now, that's a very general statement. Sometimes we understand that the person is making that general statement because, it's a general sentiment. But I think it's also worthwhile that we gamers educate ourselves on how a publisher structures its studios so we know exactly how to put our criticism and direct them to exactly where it is that we need to go. If you guys remember, when the Elden Ring fiasco was going on, there were a few developers, some of them from Ubisoft and some of them from Guerrilla, that criticized Elden Ring. Now, this made headlines, and the games journalists didn't help any, way at all, because they went ahead to say Ubisoft devs, basically criticize Elden Ring. Well, you know what the crazy thing is? I knew at least a dozen other Ubisoft developers that were enjoying Elden Ring at the same time. How do I know? Some of these Ubisoft developers make another Ubisoft game that I've played for multiple years. So I think this distinction is also very important. And this is how conversation can actually be, in a sense, filtered to make criticism very constructive, very direct, and actually see results, rather than everybody, in one sense, throwing shade, and then the other party, because they're under a publisher, sometimes they don't want to cause any problems, or they don't want to say anything that will make their employer look bad. They basically retreat and keep everybody else in the dark. Game development is hard. Only if you jump into it would you know how difficult it is, or if you see game developers actually share the process with you, are you going to know? Now, I also get it. There are probably game developers who couldn't be bothered at all to telling anybody anything, and that's fine. But whoever is willing to, we hope that these folk come forward so that we can start to have a conversation about game dev, and so that this distrust that is in the industry can start to wane, so that those developers that are passionate, that want to deliver a good product to their customers, are not overshadowed by developers who have in the past betrayed their own customers. I mean, if you go back and kind of look at it too, there's the publisher side, but sometimes some game devs have straight up lied and straight up, pretty much told their fans things that were untrue. One of the biggest ones in recent times was No Man's Sky. The studio head actually did lie a lot to their community, literally a bunch of lies. And when people played their game, they found out that this game was not what it was actually promised to be. This is one of just the seeds from 2016 that then led up to the EA DICE fiasco with Star Wars Battlefront and all of the other games left and right, that has brought to this day where any video game that is coming out right now is literally going to be looked at underneath the microscope. And not only is it going to be looked at under the microscope, there are skeptics who cannot see anything past all of their failed games that they played, or all the games they spent $60 on that were pretty much an entire bed of lies. And so this process really opens the door for the conversation to happen. Now, Warner Brothers Games Montreal is making their first game by themselves. They have made another game in the past, but that game was in the shadow of Rocksteady. And pretty much, if you guys know the history, Rocksteady gave Warner Brothers Games Montreal a hard drive with all their files, all their assets, and their code to create Batman Arkham Origins. If you don't know this, I'm going to leave a link in the description for you so that you can hear the studio head at that time, Ben Mattis, I don't know how you say his name, actually say that. In fact, that was the biggest, shocker for me, because I think in a sense I wasn't expecting that, but it made sense that they needed to make a game as fast as possible. So they basically took notes and took pretty much the ideas and build a game on the foundation that Rocksteady had already laid. In the case of Gotham Knights, it was a whole different idea. They wanted to go with their own framework, and so this is what it is that they have as their very first game. So this conversation now is looking at Gotham Knights and saying, okay, what is the community relationship with Gotham Knights and the audience? And I think that community relationship is still in process of being built. So yes, even though it is necessary that game developers actually start to educate and at least start to showcase what it is to build a video game to their audiences, for a game like Gotham Knights, it's going to take a little bit of time. For now, they have to reveal the game based on their marketing, structure and strategy. And eventually, we're probably going to start having different kinds of conversations across the board. They did a developer Q&A. That was kind of a different, means of kind of reaching out to the community. Just recently on Twitter, a lot of the developers have been following some people who've been tweeting about the game, just fans of the game. Some of the creative direction, that's the creative director and the game director, have actually been following people on Twitter, basically responding to their comments. And so this relationship is still in its most infant stage. It's not going to happen overnight. In the case of, say, a game like Tom Clancy's The Division 2, I can literally tweet the associate, he's now the creative director, and he would just reply me because we already know each other. We've been seeing each other on the internet based on my videos and his video presentations for the community for about 6 years now. And so we can just have a conversation about a question on the game and they will respond. But this is not necessarily the case in Gotham Knights, but it's still important that this is happening. And I'm sure some people are paying attention to it. And if they're not, this is the best time for you to start being able to ask questions about the game development process. I think one thing about the art is if you understand the artist and where they're coming from, it really does help the conversation, and it can start to build trust within communities, be it the developers and be it the community at large. Now, there are people who don't care about this, who don't want to know what's going on. They just want a game that they want. In fact, somebody said to me that they prefer the developers go a specific direction that they wanted. And that was quite interesting. And I had to kind of say, let's just dial it down a little bit, because the developers hung their job and their worth on this creative direction. So we have nothing to lose as the audience. Kid you not. If you don't play Gotham Knights, you will live and survive. You will have a life that is fruitful and enjoyable. I mean, you're not going to miss anything. And if you play it, yes, sure, maybe you're going to experience it. Maybe it's going to be a great game. Maybe it's not going to be a great game. But the people that have everything to lose are those who are actually making this game and putting their own jobs, their own worth, their value on the line for this particular project. So yes, I can understand that fans can get passionate. We fans can get passionate. But also, I think sometimes we have to go back and look at, say, who's on the other side of creating these products for us? What are their motivations? What is actually driving them? What is that driving force that's actually pulling them? Are they actually doing this from the fact that they really want to succeed? Or is this something where they're just doing this because, it's just a job? I mean, many of us have coworkers like that. But at the end of the day, one thing about video games is you're judged based on a lot of different factors. And Gotham Knights is going to come out and we're going to see those factors and we're going to be able to make very strong decisions based on them. But for now, this education or educative process is going on. The devs are revealing things on IGN from a broader perspective. And I think this is the time for us to start, if you're a fan, paying attention. You're going to pretty much catch a lot. You're going to learn a lot. It's a very fun process as a gamer to learn how video games are made, because it changes the way you interact with them. It really does make you have better enjoyment for a game. And it wasn't until like the last few years that I started playing every video game and started to appreciate them for what they were. Before then, I was just a picky, whiny, gamer that would just be like, this game sucks, man. This game's not really that good. But now I can be like, well, this game is not for me, but I really applaud the effort because they decided to go this direction, and hopefully somebody buys their game down the road. I wish everybody would take that approach, but it's something that we have to grow into as well. Now, this is not to say that game developers are 100% or all game developers are 100%, innocent and all that stuff. No, like I said, there's some game developers that have also tarnished these relationships in the past with fans. Some of us remember just in the just the more recent times where game developers and publishers, in the case of CD Projekt Red, have not been 100% transparent with their own communities. So let's see how this all goes. Let's see how the Gotham Knights thing actually goes. And at the end of the day, we'll judge and see if they've been transparent with us. And by and large, they are making another game. I don't know if you've seen their job listings. So they understand that being transparent with their audience now is going to build them the credibility for the other game. And if the audience doesn't like the game, they can take that feedback and put it in the other game. It's that simple. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about this particular relationship dynamic between developers and gamers. What have you noticed in the last few years? Tell me in the comment section. I'm happy to engage, and we'll talk soon. Peace out.